My name is Tracy Adair, and I'm with the Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services Levy, the Adult Services Division at King County's Department of Community and Human Services. I have several of my colleagues here today, and we'll introduce ourselves, and then we'll ask folks to introduce themselves very quickly in the room so we know who's here today. This is, just make sure you're in the right place, the right time. This is the Bidders Conference for the request for proposal for transforming senior centers into senior hubs. I assume everybody is in the room or on the phone for that event. Quickly, before we get to introductions, we indicated this would be till 3:30. We had reserved a second room for the possibility from 3 to 3:30 or 4 for conversations, but that reservation somehow did not translate to Redmond, and so we have this room until 3. But there's space in the lobby. We usually reserve an hour and a half for our bidders conferences, so we have that hour and a half. And if there's that, so that's the situation. We appreciate your patience with that, and we will run through this. So as people are signing in, we'll go ahead and get started just for the sake of timing. Before we provide introductions, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that we are holding this meeting on the unceded lands of the Duwamish peoples, and make an acknowledgement and a recognition that we appreciate the space that we're allowed to have for that piece, and want to provide an honoring of the elders and people who were here before and people to come of the Duwamish and all the peoples who are of this land. So thank you for that moment. So we'll quickly do introductions. Again, I said I'm Tracy Adair with the Older Adults and Healthy Aging team.
I am Virginia Wise, program specialist with the Older Adults and Healthy Aging team.
And she'll be taking notes today, so if she's on her computer, it's related to this meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please speak up. Virginia Wise, program specialist with the Older Adults and Healthy Aging team.
Yeah, hi everyone. Adam Schmidt, community liaison with the Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services Levy. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Nikki.
Can you speak up?
Yeah, I'm Nikki. I'm the program specialist with the Older Adult and Healthy Aging. I'm back here. I'm Angie, and I'm in the operations team for the Levy. And I'm Scarlett Green. I'm the division director of the Adult Services Division where the Levy comes.
Could those last two people speak up, please?
Angie Hinn and Scarlett Aldebott Green.
Sorry.
Okay, and if you can just say your name really quickly and who you're with as quick as we.
Tricia Barker, South Park Senior Center.
Jack Martron, South Park Senior Center. Carol Gertzel, Vashon Youth and Family Services.
Catherine Swearingen, Vashon Senior Center.
Susie Calhoun, Vashon Senior Center.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Kathy Burrows, Des Moines Activity Center.
Claire Peterson, Wallingford Community Senior Center.
Kristen Hott, co-led your adult and health program.
Forgive my seat, I'm Carla Bunn, Southeast Seattle Senior Center.
Go. Lacey Akers, Snow Valley Senior Center.
Courtney Garcia, Davis Zappa Senior Center.
Herbert Chamberlain, Southeast Seattle Senior Center.
Linda, Ukrainian Community Center.
Christy Dunn, City of Burien.
Rocky Kerwin, City of Auburn, Senior Center.
Lori Toby, Parks and Rec.
Stephen Lam, Chinese Information and Service.
If someone on the phone might have their computer and their phone on, so if you could mute. Oh, sorry. Okay, that was our bad. Sorry.
City of Burien.
Linda Bristow, City of SeaTac Senior Program.
Ina Kim, City of Enumclaw Senior Center.
Sherry McConaughey, City of Tukwila.
Tracy Galloway, City of Tukwila.
Cindy Nguyen, Washington Care Services.
Sheila Holmes, Washington Care Services. Bonnie Olson with Emerging Design Consulting, one of the technical assistance providers.
Dan Lassiter, City of Delta Park.
Heidi Nemes, El Centro de la Raza.
Stephen Nick, Gen Pride.
Karen Frederickson Goldson, University of Washington School of Social Work, Healthy Generations, and Aging with Pride. Sorry. My name's as long as.
Emma Heron, Pacific Asian Empowerment Program.
Hi everyone, Sarah Yola, Aging Council Member.
Miguel Saldin, Agent County Campus Rural Service.
Work firstly, Greater Macon Valley Community Center.
Again, Honey Wallace, Lake City, Northeast Senior Center.
I'm Kevin Brenti. I'm one of the other technical assistance providers.
Jean Marie Thomas with Northeast Seattle together.
Community of Seattle. Thomas Loria, Filipino Community of Seattle.
Sarah Stewart, Lee Garner, TNA, Stephanie Kaplan, City Nation Association.
Great, okay.
And we got a few people on the phone as well. We've got Maureen Linehan. Maureen, would you mind introducing yourself?
Okay, Maureen might be on mute.
Okay, yes, I was on mute. Hi, this is Maureen Linehan, Generations Aging with Pride.
And someone from the Korean Women's Association?
Yes, this is Jay, Myung, April from Korean Women's Association.
And Carrie Nass?
Hi, this is Carrie Nass and Debbie Little, the City of Renton.
And anybody else we did not introduce?
Betsy Maxwell, City of Kirkland.
City of Kirkland, thank you. And
Diane Ferguson, Central Area Senior Center.
Great, thank you. Can't see names. And a couple of people joined in the room. Brooke Knight, North Shore Senior Center.
Cheryl Hansen, Western Community Center.
Okay, Radine. All right. Whoop, apologies. Okay. All right. So we welcome everybody in the room. If you were able to share your name, that's great. We want to know who's in the room. And if you are here and just absorbing things, we appreciate it. And we'll move on from there for the sake of time. So what we're going to cover today is what's in the levy, what's in the Veterans Seniors Human Services Levy, an overview of this particular strategy, Transforming Senior Centers, overview of the particular request for proposal, the fact that we have some technical assistance available for writing the proposal for small organizations, and we will cover that definition. We're going to talk a few slides about how to apply, and then we're going to ask questions and answers. So what is the VSHSL? So as a reminder, the levy was passed in King County by King County voters in November of 2017. It's a 6-year property tax levy that brings, and the 6 years are from January 2018 to December 2023. 10 cents per every $1,000 of assessed property value goes toward the levy. There's an estimated $55 to $65 million annually generated by the levy. And the implementation plan for that passed in 2018. The implementation plan, as you probably know because you were part of that discussion, was informed by continuous community engagement. And this strategy is one of the pieces in the the implementation plan. There are 5 focus prior areas, and those are housing stability, financial stability, social engagement, healthy living, and then systems access and improvement. And the levy focuses on 3 populations, veterans and vulnerable populations. And added to this levy, for this round of the levy, was the seniors population, to people who are 55 and older. So the first year of the levy was a transition plan in 2018, and now starting in 2019 is the implementation plan. The levy has some guiding principles: connection, belonging, and making sure that the levy is doing what only the levy can do. So focusing on those funding areas and those populations and those services and strategies, or areas where other funding sources may not touch. So people do their best when they when they have a sense of belonging based in their personal relationships and connections to community, and the levy provides opportunities for that throughout the populations and the 5 strategy areas. The levy focuses on equity and social justice. Our overarching goal is to ensure that all people, regardless of who they are where they live, have an opportunity to thrive with full and equal access to opportunities, power, and resources. So equity and social justice is the key to the work of the levy and the lens from which the funding opportunities are focused. We seek to support organizations that are reflective of and embedded in the communities that they serve. And we recognize and address the disparities and disproportionalities that exist throughout King County. And so those are our areas of focus for funding. We're going to specifically talk about this strategy in the levy. This levy strategy is called Transform Senior Centers, and it's under the social engagement strategy. If you are looking at the many paged implementation plan, it's labeled as SE3. Yes. Oops, did I push too many? What happened? Wow, I got really excited there. Sorry about that. So this strategy provides transformational funding to competitively selected senior centers in becoming vibrant and inclusive senior hubs that offer resources, expand outreach, and support opportunities for engagement for the diversity of seniors throughout King County. And why is this strategy in the levy? Because senior centers are currently underutilized due to lack of resources and limited budgets. The strategy leverages the latent capacity within those centers to increase contacts and engagement for their neighbors and people across King County. The strategy also contributes to the community level effort to build a network of resources dedicated to seniors that help people, older adults, seniors, remain in their communities of choice. So that's why the levy strategy is in there, and now we're going to talk about specifically the request for proposal that came from that strategy. The focus population are older adults and caregivers in general. And in particular, we're looking at those seniors who have previously had no or limited involvement in senior centers due to barriers such as language, transportation, mobility, cultural differences, and understanding ageism, racism, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer status, and other factors that contribute to isolation or exclusion. And in particular, or just an additional focus population, are seniors who are veterans, service members, or family members of veterans or a service member. And there's a little bit of specific funding in the levy to serve that population. So this is kind of a foundational piece of this is the definition of a senior center as defined in this request for proposal. That might be a little bit different definition than you're used to. And so this is in your PowerPoint. And this is the bedrock of the proposal based on, you have to be a senior center in order to be eligible for this funding. And this is the definition, and apologies for reading this directly from the slide, but I want to be clear with this, and especially on the folks on the phone and as we're recording it. So a definition of senior center used in this request for proposal is an entity that hosts a physical space for seniors, people 55 and older, to gather in order to access services that promote healthy aging and to experience life enrichment, empowerment, belonging, and enjoyment. A senior center's programs include at least 3 of the following services: food and nutrition programs or congregate or shared meals, social activities, information and assistance that connects individuals to aging networks and services, educational opportunities for enrichment and life planning, celebratory events for holidays, birthdays, cultural experiences, etc., health promotion, wellness, and fitness activities. A senior center may have a geographic or cultural focus. The space defined as a senior center may be a standalone, dedicated building or be a part of a larger or shared center that has multiple purposes, such as a community center. That space may also include a series of spaces or locations. And so to speak to that, services must be ongoing and offered on a regular basis, but do not necessarily need to be at the same location every day. The senior center may meet or provide services at different locations on different days of the week, as long as there is a consistent schedule easily accessed by intended participants and community organizations who can depend upon that location and on any specific day of the week or the month. So that is the definition of a senior center. Definition of a senior hub is that, along with a senior hub will be available to seniors and their caregivers on a regular and consistent basis, ideally several hours a day, 5 days per week. If the senior hub consists of partnering senior centers, the times and location of those services may be spread between the partnering centers in order to achieve the level of access required to be considered a senior hub. Services need not be equal at each partner and may be structured so as to capitalize on the strengths of each partner senior center, that each partner senior center brings to the partnership, as well as on the needs of the portion of the geographic or area or population group that each partner seeks to serve. Services and supports provided through the senior hub will reflect culturally informed approaches, taking into consideration particular cultural or programmatic specifications to support engagement and inclusion for focused populations that that particular senior hub intends to serve. A senior hub has the capacity to provide the following services as appropriate and needed for their geographic service region and their articulated service populations. So outreach to increase participation and provide opportunities for social engagement for people that are in that geographic or cultural sphere who might otherwise remain isolated or disengaged. Engagement with isolated seniors who may choose not to come into one of the senior centers or into the senior center that is transforming to the hub or to one of the partnering senior centers. So engagement even when those isolated elders are not seeking services within the physical space. Guided connections and active navigation of referrals between the senior hub and other specified levy funded service providers. And those are on a case-by-case basis, what makes sense for that particular senior hub, and that particular other levy provider will be connected as it makes sense for the population served, the geographic or cultural focus, and the the other levy-funded contractors. Coordination with community organizations to expand the services available through the senior hubs. Knowledge of and participation in community living connections, which is the Aging and Disability Services Resource Center, a resource service, representing the voice of seniors served by the Senior Hub and other human service collaboratives, such as transportation, food access, housing as appropriate, and as agreed upon on a case-by-case basis in partnership with King County, so that the Senior Hub is expressing the voice in kind of a place of advocacy and allowing those seniors to have a voice in the community around them. Active engagement in and occasional hosting of the anticipated Senior Hubs Learning Collaborative. So the vision around that is whichever funded senior hubs will participate on a regular basis in a mutual learning opportunity with King County and share best practices and connections. A hub can grow from either a single senior center as defined in this RFP, applying on its own, or a partnership of senior centers that each meet the definition of the senior center as defined in this RFP. For this RFP, the specifically means senior centers who are working together on an application to become one senior hub together. We'll talk a little bit later about the difference between a partnership and other connections you make in the community as a senior hub. So there's $20,650,000 is available for this program period, and we're anticipating from September 1st, 2019 through December of 2023. The individual applicants or partnerships of applicants, the specific applications, can ask for up to $440,000 annually per application. And making a note that because 2019 has the funding portion in 2019 has less months in it, applicants might consider putting startup costs in that piece so that you still potentially have the same level of funding available, but it's an truncated number of months.
Did you want the whole question to the end?
It would be great. We'll address questions at the end. So applicants that are eligible are organizations that meet the definition of a senior center as defined in this RFP, or a partnership of those senior centers, intending to develop a senior hub within one of two categories, basically a geographic senior hub or a culturally focused senior hub. And for the sake of clarity, I will read what is on the slide. I will break my own rule again to read specifically the slide because it's tiny little print. So you can either be a partnership or a single senior center interested in developing or expanding models of inclusion and strengthening their ability to serve as a geographic senior hub with particular intention of providing outreach and engagement for focus populations that reside within their geographic area, including seniors who do not currently benefit from their current senior center programming. Or you can be a single senior center or a partnership of senior centers providing support, outreach, connection, and community engagement to seniors with particular cultural identities who have experienced disparities in health outcomes because of racism, home trans queer phobia, or other social barriers such as immigration status or language. For those senior hubs that are funded, the contracting requirements will include acting as a senior hub, as defined in the request for proposal, data collection and reporting. So at some point through this funding period, we will have the potential for gathering client level data. We're working on that piece right now, so it's not a piece that starts up front, and it won't be required for all program pieces. It's on the individual program level of what makes sense to collect client level data, but we will be collecting aggregate and narrative reports as well. So those are pieces that are required. Service coordination. So services must be coordinated and aligned with other levy funded organizations and system partners in order to better serve folks in King County. How this will be coordinated will be a discussion between the contracted hub and King County in collaboration, so that this isn't thrust upon you, but in discussion it makes sense. Requiring participation in meetings, we have VSHSL trainings on a regular basis. There will be VSHSL contractor meetings that are not just the outcome of this RFP, but all the RFPs that we're running. We have general contractor meetings on a regular basis. And in particular for this one, we referenced it before, the collaborative learning, the Senior Hub's collaborative learning will be a requirement to participate in that. And at some point, we'll also talk about evaluation, but those pieces will be in combination and collaboration and discussion with King County between the awarded hubs. So it's not going to, again, it's going to be a dialogue back and forth about what evaluation pieces look like. Timeline, the RFP was released on March 29th. Today is the bidders conference, April 18th. For those agencies that meet the small agency requirement and want technical assistance, please ask for that by May 6th. Final day to submit questions is May 13th. The RFP is due on Friday, May 24th, right before the Memorial Day weekends at 11:59 p.m. via Zoom grants. We will be reviewing responses in June, collaborating on that in July. If there are a need for site visits or interviews, those will take place in July. Notification of award decisions is anticipated to be late July and spending August in contracting with an anticipated start date of September 1st. Dates are subject to change. So applying. So you apply by Zoom grants. We have a moment in a little bit to place where that has a more specific information about it. By midnight, 11:59, right before midnight on that Friday. The complete submittal will include responses to the summary questions, which will be submitted through Zoom Grants, responses to the narrative questions, which are going to be a Word document that you pull down rather than applying through, you apply through Zoom Grants, but the response to narrative questions will be through a document that you would then attach to your Zoom Grants application and the budget template. So those 3 pieces are required. And rating criteria. So these are the pieces that we're going to be looking at. And in the pages 15 through 17 of the request for a proposal, you will find detailed information about this criteria. But qualifications, capacity, experience will be worth 20 points.
Just want to make sure it's still. It said we got a message. It was kind of freezing up, so I'm just making sure it still
we're
works.
Just having a little technical difficulties.
You can keep going. They record the sound.
Program model is worth 50 points. Community connections and collaborations. There's that word collaboration instead of partnership, because collaboration in this piece means who are you connecting with outside of the folks you may be partnering with in order to become a hub. And that's worth 15 points. Attention to equity and social justice is worth 20 points. Budget and fiscal questions are specific to that, and we're looking at that for 15 points. And data collection, the fact that you're willing to work with us on this and build your capacity around that is worth 5 points. If site visits are needed, and we reserve the right for that, but don't, we're not expecting that up front, but as the possibility, that will be an additional points as necessary. So before the site visits, the total score possibilities are 125. You will see in the RFP that if you downloaded it for the first week that it accidentally says 100 points in some piece of the narrative, but the actual point additions were the 125. I just forgot to change that piece. So we put an addendum to the RFP out there, learned how to do that in Zoom Grants, and just making sure that all our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted in the same way on each page. So as we indicated, technical assistance is available for small agencies, and that the definition of that is people fewer than 20 full-time equivalent employees, and so that's 19 or fewer full-time equivalent, and less than $4 million operating budget in the prior fiscal year. So if there's a group of partnering senior centers and some of the partners are smaller organizations that fit in, then the technical assistance would be available through those smaller organizations. Information about that is seen in attachment D of the request for proposal on Zoom Grants, and that's under the library tab. You can pull that down. And here's information about that. All materials are posted on Zoom Grants. If you look at Zoom Grants, there's a tab called Library. You will find all the attachments there. You must use Zoom Grants in order to put your basic information, your summary questions in, and then pull down the narrative questions, answer those in a Word document, save it, and attach it back up to Zoom Grants. And there's a method for doing that through the Zoom Grants. The link is here, but I suspect you've all seen that link before. Okay, so I'm going to start with some questions that came in to us. There was one set of questions that came in several days ago, so I will start with those, and then we'll open up questions to the room.
And those will be posted.
And we will, yes, thank you for that reminder, Dagmar. We will post all questions that are asked today and our answers sometime in the next coming days on Zoom Grants, and then on a regular basis as if they come in. The last day to ask questions is May 13th, and those will be posted shortly after that. So these questions that are answered today here will be posted sometime in the next several days. Let me pull down my reading glasses. So the question is the total amount to be distributed this year 4 million or 3.7 million? It's not clear to us how the 300,000 of veterans funds will be distributed. That's a great question.
It's not clear to us how what?
How the 300,000 for the veterans, there's two different pieces. And that there's not going to be a separate funding line for that, and there's not going to be a separate request for that. If you, one of the narrative questions is, do you want to serve veterans, track that, have a specific data point for that piece, and do particular outreach for that particular population? And if the senior hub that is awarded says yes on that, then there will be funds that are tied to that, but it's not going to be a separate component of it.
Tracy, are those funds going to be in addition to what the maximum is?
No, those.
Okay.
Could you repeat the question?
So sorry, thank you for reminding me. So the question was, will those funds be in addition to the total amount? And no, that those will be embedded. It's just a particular way how we're pulling the funding. And
So, for instance, in the 440, it will be included in that total of 440.
the total, whatever the total award that a.
Sorry, can you repeat?
Maybe people can stand when they ask their question and direct the services here.
Well, it's for the phone call too. Is really what.
I think the question was so the 440 up to 440, does that include the veterans?
Yes, it does.
In there? Yes.
Yes.
The answer is yes.
Okay. Great. So the next question that was submitted earlier was, could you share how the county came up with a maximum amount of 440,000 per hub when the total, even if there were just 10 hubs, would be higher than that? And our answer is that we don't expect the awards to be all the same. We expect awards to vary depending on the number of hubs, the location of the hubs, the number of partnering, who you're going to serve, and where those pieces are. And so the total amount that a particular hub can ask for, we want you to really be clear of what is needed, and we will adjust awards as necessary, expecting that not all the awards are going, the amount per award will vary depending on the geographic, cultural location, the number of people served, just kind of the program model.
And I would add that as we have also reserved the possibility in RFP to ask for a hub that has submitted an application to include an additional senior center supplied separately, and have also reserved the possibility of grouping folks, that it could potentially be that some award amount ends up being higher than the 440. It is just that we are requesting that no requests assume a budget higher than 440.
Thank you for that clarification, Scarlett. Okay. Are the folks on the phone able to hear?
Yes.
Okay, great. So here's a question, and it gets to the partnership versus partnership and collaboration. Can a senior center be a part of a hub, but also collaborate with another senior center? An example, Wallingford, Lake City, and Greenwood partner together on programming and expand memory loss programming, but we don't want to exclude others in the north end. Ballard and Shoreline will likely be part of another hub, possibly, but be excluding them because they aren't in our hub. We lose opportunity to spread programming more efficiently and effectively. So yes, the partnership is the group that comes together, names itself, puts its budget, names all the senior centers that are partnering together. That does not preclude any chance for you to collaborate with other senior centers, other community partners, other hubs. And so the partnership is just the definition of who is going to get the funding in that senior hub if you choose to partner as an award. It does not preclude any connections and collaboration. So if you are collaborating with a community organization, whether it's another senior hub, another senior partner, or another community organization, and you needed funding for that collaboration, you wouldn't necessarily need that collaborator to be a part of your partnership. You would just indicate that in your budget that funding for collaborations that are outside of this partnership are a piece of that. So, yes.
So at the last meeting, you mentioned you didn't expect hubs to be more than 2 or 3 partners.
That was we did, I'm not sure how it was expressed, but we said that's a vision. We are not limiting the number of hubs, of partners. Sorry, we are not limiting the number of partnerships that can come together in order to be one hub.
But you were you were very specific at the last meeting that it was really, you could see maybe 2 or 3. So that was really kind of limiting us at the time, which is
well,
fine.
remember that was a community meeting, and we were hearing feedback, and we were getting and hearing pieces, and the request for proposal was not written, that was not published at that point. And so
I'm just curious, I haven't gotten into the request for proposal, but if
the request for proposal does not limit the number of partners that can come together.
I'm just thinking, like, actually doing the Zoom paperwork, how complicated that will be by the number of partners you have and whose account and how that's all.
So I'm not sure how to answer your question but the question, there's a narrative, the narrative questions are in there, and you can answer them. If you're an individual senior center applying, you would answer them that way. If you're partnering senior centers, there's a direction to answer for each of the partners as your model comes together. Yes, thank you. Because some of these might be addressing pieces like this.
On the limit of partnership, I just wanted to verify that there is no formal limit to the partnership number in the request for proposals, and so it is up to those applying to make the argument that the number of partners included in that partnership makes sense. The conversation at the bidders conference, the focus of that was to discuss, this can't work if partners are not sustainable. So 20 partners in a partnership is going to dilute the funding to such a degree that it may not be sustainable. So that's sort of what you're balancing.
Yes, thank you, Scarlett, we'll have that. And just as a clarity, that was a community meeting, and this is the bidders conference, just those pieces. So, question is, will the page limit be the same for all grant applications, regardless of how many senior centers are in the hub?
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Will the page limit be the same for all grant applications, regardless of how many senior centers are in the hub? And this refers to the 18 pages limited for the narrative questions. And yes, we took into account our assumption of how many pages it would answer, thinking about an average number of participant partnering on that. So it's single pages, 18 pages limited for the narrative questions. And that's not expecting all, you would not, that's not requiring you to fill the 18 pages.
I know.
I'm going to get through the written piece, the questions that were submitted already. There was a request to send a list of the senior centers that the county is currently funding, and if not, a list of senior centers in King County. And we have not posted that yet because we did not limit the number of the people that were funded through the transition funds, and those grants either ended in December or March, are not the only senior centers that exist, and are not the only ones that would be defined in this RFP, so we did not post that now, but we can consider posting some connections about that. We did send out a list of participants who have participated in one of the first 3 community planning sessions. At some point in early March, we sent out a list to the levy connections and the pretty exhaustive distribution list, and that included participants with email access to those folks who had participated in community planning sessions. But we'll get back to you about what additional pieces we may end up posting on the Zoom Grants website. And then the last question is, where will the answers be posted? Zoom Grants, this is our process within King County is not to answer individual inquiries that come in on a particular request for proposal. So we wait until the bidders conference to answer any questions that have come in prior to the bidders conference. After the bidders conference, these questions, anything that's discussed in this room will be posted up on that Zoom Grants website. And again, repeating what I said earlier, those will be posted on a regular basis until the deadline for questions, May 13th, and shortly after that will be the final posting of questions. Okay, so there were additional questions
Before we get
in
started,
the room.
if I may interject. We're supposed to have this room until 3:30, and there's some sort of mix-up with KCLS, so we'll have it until 3. If you do not have your question answered today, please let us know in an email what your question is. So I know we have a lot of people out here who want to answer some stuff, but we're going to try and get out of here right at 3 o'clock. If you have not signed into the back, please do so. That's where we'll make sure and reflect who all was in this room today, as well as sharing the link to the RFP as well. So just a note there.
Thank you, Adam. But we have a robust amount of time now and to answer questions. So let's see. And I can't see people's names, and I apologize if I've talked to you and I know your name, but so 1 and then 2.
Okay. Just a clarification on the collaborations in the slides on page 6, the RFP overview, you made mention to knowledge of and/or participation in community living connections. And then in the scoring, the rating criteria, there's the community connections and collaborations for 15 points. Is that referencing the community living connections?
Community living connections is one of the
many
collaborations, but the question around what community connections you have and collaborations is not specific to Aging and Disability Services Community Living Connections. That's the Aging and Disability Services Resource Center, and it's just knowing about that center. We're not limiting your collaborations and connections to that.
That's not what the point is.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I have 2 questions.
Two
I hope
questions.
you guys can hear me, okay? The first one, as we were reading through the RFP, makes reference to space expansion. Can we use funds if we're awarded to expand building and for construction?
If infrastructure can be a piece of the funded opportunity. So the question was, can space expansion be a piece of that? And yes.
And then the second question was, you have a partnership, and you're both expected to submit a budget. If awarded, do you pay both people or both groups, or you send one check and we disperse?
So we would, and I apologize that I did not put this in the PowerPoint, how it was. Yes, what we will do, and we will contract individually separately with each partner, but those contracts will look like a puzzle piece, or a puzzle, and there will be a piece of the puzzle that comes together, and they will reflect each other specifically. So that you're referencing the partnership in each individual contract, and we will invoice separately with each partnering participant in the hub, but there will be a lot of communication and collaboration between those so that they all know what's happening around that. But one of the pieces that we heard was that forming formalized partnerships and those subcontracts and pieces like that would be prohibitive, especially to city-funded senior centers. And so we took on the onus of individually contracting with the potential partners. But those contracts will reflect each other. They will fit together like a puzzle to make that hub. So, yes. 1, 2.
I have a question in relation to the previous speaker. You said that yes, infrastructure can be part of budgets. The last bill round, there was a $50,000 limit, actually right up to $50,000, because otherwise then you're looking at maybe more appropriately using CDBG monies for the King County. So is that $50,000 limit in place? Because if we do have to spend all of the money for September through December, the only way to do that would be...
We did not put a limit on the infrastructure ahead of time. We will look at what applicants come in and what makes sense programmatically and what is needed in a particular area.
So we can look at putting them out there.
Yes, we want you to create hubs that are sustainable, accessible connections to the community. So we did not put a limit on the infrastructure in there. So did everybody hear Joanne's question? Is there a limit? Okay, and then we have Claire, and then we'll move over here.
I have a couple questions. First is regarding client level data, which we can collect, but we've been concerned about protecting confidential information like social work data.
And those are on the individual level. The King County is moving toward client level data, but we understand that there are pieces that a particular individual may not want to share, or a particular program doesn't make sense to share for that particular program, and those are on a case. We will look at those individually.
Thank you. The other one is, are you assuming that there will be a slice of this funding specific for participation in the Senior Hubs Learning Collaborative?
We are not assuming a cost around that. We're not precluding a cost.
And then my final question, sorry, is will the county then, you talk about the contracting, the county will then be responsible for non-performers?
We will work with the hub, because if there's a non-performer in one of the senior centers, then the hub may not be a hub anymore, but we want the hubs to sustain themselves and be to continue. So we will work in collaboration with all the partners of that hub.
And will the contracts have then a provision for opting out, like particular senior center thought they could do it, and now they've decided 2 years in, we just can't do this anymore? Is it possible? Will the contracting anticipate opting out, or will we solve that problem when we get to it? My anticipation is that we'll solve that problem as we get to it, Claire, but if that's a different, we'll consider that, and if there's a different answer, we will post that. Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. Susie.
Do you have guidance for administrative costs? Do you like to do it as a percentage, or do you like an hourly?
That is a good question. I do not know that. Pardon?
Could you repeat the question?
Is there a guidance for the administrative costs? Is there a certain percentage that King County looks at or doesn't look at, or is there a threshold or a bar around that? And I don't believe that there is. We will weigh applications within the number of applications we get, and looking at what are costs for programming, where are the dollars best served, and look at that piece right here. So we're going to go here, and then Patricia, I'm going to let a few other people ask questions, and we'll make sure you get to you.
So I'm assuming that there's one Zoom grant proposal for the 2 senior hubs or senior hub that includes a partner. So one combined budget.
So the question is, if there's partnering senior centers applying as one hub, that's one Zoom grants application. And the budget form, there's 2 budget forms, one for a single senior center applying as its own self with no partners, and there's a budget form that is for a partnering set of senior centers. The budget form for the partnering set of senior centers has 3 tabs on it right now. There's instructions for adding additional tabs. So we just put that on there for the sake of efficacy, and there's in red pieces around how to add a tab if there's additional partners. Okay, so I've lost who is, if you guys can help me figure out, Hamdi.
I know that these are things like a little bit inclusive. So is there a budget for data?
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
In writing the application, we don't have a data. Would that be required?
Is data required?
Yeah.
Like a data person, you're saying? Like
Yeah.
a data staff member? Or
No, data to be included, like, how many was there?
We are not, King County is moving away from the county. Eventually, we will move toward performance measurements, and we'll work with the awarded hubs to figure out what those performance measurements make sense to be. We're not setting up front an expectation of the number of people you serve. We want you to serve the people you serve well. We want you to serve the people you're not able to, who are not accessing senior centers right now. And but we're not setting a bar for what that looks like, because we don't know what that looks like for an individual set of senior centers or a hub. I'm sorry, does it, fiscal sponsorship? What would that, she's asking if fiscal sponsorship is allowed, and what would that?
Like, an agency that doesn't know tribal we supposed to have an agency that
we need to consider that piece, and we will get back to you on the answer to whether a fiscal sponsorship is allowed. I answer that right now.
So there are two questions. If a fiscal sponsorship is allowed from a 501c3 by a larger 501c3 that may have the insurance requirements and all that, that's one question. So we'll talk to our procurement folks and we'll talk to our finance folks and get back to you. And then it's a separate question as to whether a fiscal sponsorship is an organization that hasn't achieved 501c3 status at all. So we'll answer both of those online.
Thank you, Scarlett, for that clarity. Okay, Lee.
So this is a follow-up to Joanne's question. Say you want to put that elevator in. It's absolutely impossible to get that done between September and December of this year. Are you going to be doing what you did last year and rolling some of that money over, since there's only 4 months to spend actually $400,000?
We need to go, I need to get back with our fiscal folks and our procurement folks on that, on how, because there is very specific levy funded our annual costs and the allocations, and so we will consider that and figure out what the implications are and have a specific answer. Yes.
So mine is an idea. So let's say we have 2 collaboratives, one in the Seattle and then one in the South, and would we be competing with ourselves if we submitted an application as a collaborative?
So it's a partnership. I'm going to use the word partnership because collaborative is used as a different way in this RFP. So a partnership coming together, and if a senior center was a participant in 2 different applications, each application will be competing against the other applications, and so essentially, yes. I guess I'm not. So
I think she's saying there's 2 hubs for her.
So let me distinguish. A hub does not have to be geographically, if it's a cultural hub or a hub on a particular, like say a group of senior centers wanted to address rural issues, you do not have to be contingent geographically to apply as a set of partnering senior centers becoming a hub. A hub could have spokes and centers of focus in different parts of the county, and you would be considered one hub. You'd be applying together. Is that what you mean, or are you saying that you're thinking about partnering maybe with this group or maybe with this group, and you want to have your opportunities available for both?
Yes, exactly.
If that was the case, then each application, regardless of the number of partnerships, will be a piece of the competitive, will be looking weighed against the other applications. Emma.
So if both hubs applied in one.
So both senior centers.
Yes, applied with the RFP in one application. How does King County determine how the funding is allocated for that?
If a set of partnering senior centers would come together, discuss with each other the needs and the budgets, and there's a place in the budget forms for each senior center that's coming together as that partnership to indicate the budget needs, and the group would agree on what budget needs were there for each of the partnering senior centers.
But you have to contract individually.
But we will then individually contract with whoever is the partner of the awarded hubs.
So
both, or however many partners are in that awarded hub, we will individually contract with each of the senior centers under the name of that hub, so that you're not having to take the burden on of subcontracting with yourselves. And then you and I were pointing at different people.
So this is another sort of what if. What if you have two senior centers that want to partner, and rather than partnering because they have one similar population, if they have two different populations and they want to teach each other and grow and exchange?
If your program model makes sense as a hub, the question is, do the senior centers that are partnering together have to be looking at the same population or the same issues? And the senior hub you create the model of the senior hub. So what is the basis of that model? And so, yes, make a pitch, create the model, convince the model, and Patricia. Oh, sorry.
This is a follow-up question to partners submitting our budget.
Okay.
We were awarded a different amount than what we asked for. How is that budgeting then decided?
We will work. So the question is, and we're going to ask if we compute, because it's a little bit hard to hear when there's. The question is, if partnering senior centers come together to put the application together as a hub, they are awarded, but they're awarded a slightly different amount than asked, or we will work individually with that hub, the partnering centers of that hub, in collaboration with each other, so that you all know where you're at with that budget.
We're going to go here next, and then we're going to go to Virginia.
I have some questions online.
Okay, sorry, you had your hand up. Sorry, people on the phone.
So, Virginia, would you mind reading us the questions?
Sure. I have two questions from Korean Women's Association. The first one is, our organization meets the definition of a senior center. So we want to go to a senior hub from a senior center. You asked us to include last year's budget for our senior center. Can we ask in the proposal to increase our capacity, staffing, and operation, etc.?
So the question is, can the request include an increase from baseline to increase the capacity? And yes.
And their next question is, for partnership, do we need to include videos, or will mention it in the narrative?
We do not. That is our gift to you. The question is, in partnerships, do you need memorandums of understanding or any of those other formalized pieces in the application? And no, you do not. For the application, you just need to apply together. So you're obviously coming together. And
So two questions, maybe three. Sorry. First one is that September 1st start date. Is that pretty solid? Like, so if I plan that I'm going to do something and it's going to take me September to December, and let's say that the contracting is not done until October, can I go back and bill back to September 1?
Are you a current senior center with the?
I think the answer is yes, but I wanted to.
So our intention is to have contracts done, but you will see on the caveat on that the dates are flexible, but our intention is to have a September 1st start date.
Spending money on capital.
Understandable.
You've got to either go or not go.
So
and November, December capital expenditures don't really work.
So
People
I
really work.
Clarify, because this question has now kind of come up a couple of times. The awards are going to be for 2023. So we realize that the first chunk of spending, because of the way the allocation table is in the implementation plan, sort of asks for capital expenditures or large expenditures in the first 6 months. The award period is longer than that. We absolutely will have to go to council and seek a reappropriation of funds for the next period if it looks like the 2019 funds can't be spent down. But that is not a let's solve right now during the application process. If what you need is an elevator, a car, a set of stairs, a ramp, whatever that is to make your hub sustainable, then that needs to be in the application. And then
we'll work.
We'll work with you to make that happen.
All right, Jeannie Falls.
I had two questions.
Did you get your three? You had. Sorry, apologies.
I had another question.
There was.
So there is going to be a period of MOU contracting possibly with partners, like if our hub chooses to collaborate with others, getting those memorandums of understanding. my recollection is that there was going to be some sort of performance metric, like saying, hey, the project plan is that you're going to have MOUs done by such and such a date. That's milestones.
Milestones, I want to be clear, the question was, are MOUs required? And we specifically said, no, they're not.
Right.
And so I want to make sure we're not talking MOUs. We're talking, there's a possibility that milestones will be the first pieces that we look at in contracting. What are your milestones will be.
Okay, never mind.
Developing
My
the
questions are relevant. Thanks.
Okay, great. And then Jeannie.
Hi, thank you. Today's question is about being part of more than one application. So it sounds like if you want, I could see somebody, particularly if they are a senior center and also a niche population that serves the bigger entity, that you could be part of several applications. Are you guys expecting that? Two, if you were both applications are successful, does that mean somebody can get funding from two different sources, or it would be? I'm just trying to figure out how that would work, and part of that is that I'm still a little bit unclear of the goal of the actual hubs, whether it's just to consolidate the groups that are being funded, or if there's an overarching real goal that partnering. I'm enjoying talking to people about partnering, and I think it's going to be great. But who you partner with, and how many people are in your partnership, and stuff like that the questions are very sort of vague. It's hard to answer them in our own minds or my own mind without a little bit more guidance on what the function of the actual hub is. Thank you.
The functions of the hub is to be a vital foundational center of engagement, opportunity, reaching out and reaching in for seniors in King County, to be kind of a place that's robust enough and funded well enough for sustainability through the 5 years and beyond. So foundational funding to create a rich resource center for elders in King County. The partnering piece of that is an option. It's not a requirement. And so the hub model is founded on the idea that there will be 10 to 13 robust foundational locations that spread the connection to elders in King County.
I guess just to follow up, if they're not location-based, then that's what confuses me. It's like a cultural base. That's not it's a location.
But it's populations served that currently are not experiencing connection to senior centers, and a robust resource for a particular population of seniors is the cultural base of a hub. Could be that, and so that the rich place for senior centers who identify with that population would be served by that hub.
Well, we got quite a question. Hold on, we got quite a few people. Jeannie, is your question? Do you feel like we're in a good spot? Can I move on to some other questions?
Sure.
Okay. Let's go back to Bonnie. You're next.
Okay.
Nice.
So my question, I hope I can express it, is what's actually very specific, and I think it's linguistically based. And so Adam, they're not paying attention, so I'm gonna focus on you.
No, I am. I wanted to make sure that we had space afterwards.
That's okay. It's in the narrative questions. It's question number 2. And it's just that the phraseology, I just want to make sure when I answer it, that I'm answering it correctly. So it starts off with, based on our current status. So it starts with, what challenges in infrastructure, budget, staffing, training, programming, and other areas limit your ability to sustain current programs at the service level you consider appropriate for your current size? Okay, so we're very much going with where are we at right now at a snapshot, where we're at right now, and then it says an intended reach.
So we want to make sure that you're able to continue to do the services, the awarded hubs are able to continue the work they do now. And if that is challenging because of budgets and resources, make sure you have a foundational.
Okay. Because the second part of the question definitely
Can
says.
I augment a little bit?
Yes.
Get to the second part. So essentially, as Tracy said, the idea is we can't possibly expand to populations that you are not currently serving, to cultural groups or LGBTQ seniors that you are not currently serving if you are not currently sustainable. And so it is not are you fiscally sustainable, you're getting a ding because you're not.
Mm-hmm.
It is a help us understand what portion of this funding gets you to we are surviving, or so that we can thrive.
Okay.
Which portion is which? That is what the question is asking.
And that's where I took it until I got to the intended reach. And then that kind of threw me off because I was like, well, the second part of the question really goes into now what do you need to reach out and really expand your scope?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But the intended reach really kind of threw me off, like, are you asking if I really want to reach other groups, if I really want to reach my socially isolated, if I want to reach out where my transportation doesn't go. So the intended reach threw me off in that first part of the question. I just wanted to make sure I was answering it correctly.
Yeah, thank you. Apologies. It's super hard to get it clear in writing, but that is exactly right. If you are saying our focus is going to be reaching isolated seniors in our rural areas. What do you need to be sustainable, and what portion do you need to do that into this?
Okay, it's the first and second part of the
Yes.
question. Okay, thank you.
You're good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mark, next.
I appreciate the clarification.
Easy one, infrastructure projects, prevailing wage.
That is a good question. The prevailing wage. So the question is, do we look at contracted is the hard infrastructure? Do we require prevailing wage for the work? And yes, we do. That's the same as the state and county and city.
So the question I have is on page 6, where it says that guided connections and active navigation of referrals between the senior hub and other specified VSHSL funded service providers. So are you going to put us in touch with who those people are?
Yes, we will. We will make sure that we connect our contracts, other contracts through VSHSL with the senior hubs.
Okay,
and
so we don't write it into that.
No, just you need to understand that that's a requirement and a connection, and we will work with you we will work with the awarded hubs to figure out which ones of those make sense.
To be finding those people first.
They are not yet funded. This is our first large procurement in years, and so it is literally, are you willing for us to reach out to you in the hub and say, we have brought online 5 providers, and we want to understand if this is a need for the populations you are serving or expanding to serve in your hub, and if so, would you consider co-location, understanding their programs, referrals, dissemination of materials? It will be different for every provider, for every program we bring online. So it's literally, are you willing to partner with us in this?
Okay, and then is that the different people that get different monies for different strategies?
Yes.
Okay, and
Yes.
then the other one was active engagement in and hosting anticipated senior hub learning collaborative. Let's learn.
That's what I referenced earlier, and that is a vision that the senior hubs that are awarded can work together to learn best practices, learn from each other, and we want to make sure that you're engaged in that process and willing to come to meetings around that and host meetings.
Will you put that with us?
Yes, yeah.
And then we're going to go here next, and I'm going to pop over there.
And are there other questions on the line? Okay.
So if for whatever reason it's easier or preferable for one agency to have a master contract and subcontract out or provide services out versus having individual contracts with other agencies? Is that
So the question is
possible?
if it's better, if subcontracting with one larger agency is possible. And let me consider that. We want to make sure that we have equity and that the smaller agencies aren't subsumed by the assumption of that larger agency. And so they would need to come to the table and say, yeah, we really want to do that. And it has to be a real voice of yes. So let me consider that.
I'll do it now. Okay, Stephen, I saw you. Go ahead.
And
So, Enterprise is a LGBTQ organization. We have both a senior center we're developing. We also have a lot of cultural competency. So we're getting a lot of requests from different senior centers to be a part of their
So can I jump right in on that one piece? So we are, and I did not make a slide for this. I don't know why. One of the options we have, one of the service pieces a hub can have in there is to provide expert and cultural competency training to other hubs. And so if there is a hub that has a particular focus, an LGBT focus, or a focus on dementia, or a focus on rural issues, or a focus on a particular population in King County that you provide services really well for, you could put into your application, we want to provide technical assistance, expertise, connections, training opportunities to the other hubs, and we want to fund that through our hub. And so you would put into your budget that piece. If you're already in conversations with other senior centers that are looking at that, there's not a particular need for partner for them to get that, because if there's a senior hub that is awarded that has that service piece and that service piece is accepted into the award, then it would be on the onus of that hub to provide their expertise to the community of providers.
And can I also say, additionally, that could also be a geographic-based hub that provides that service. So let's say
Right, not just the cultural hub. Thank you.
Or a couple of senior centers with a ton of expertise in providing services to homeless seniors, for example. And they say, one of the things we can do is that we bring other hubs online, and as the broader homeless population stretches throughout the county, is to provide you with expertise and knowledge in how to in that population. That hub can say this is a service that we're going to provide in other hubs and put a funding requirement associated with
Stephen, are you good?
Thank you.
Oleg, and then back there.
I have two questions. In regard to partnership, I understood that senior center could partner with several hubs. So is there the limit for how many hubs?
So I want to be clear that we're talking about senior centers partnering, senior centers partner, other senior centers partner to become a hub. So we're not partnering with other hubs.
Right, yeah. But what I mean, for instance, the Ukrainian center nearby is Kent Senior Center. They might want to develop a hub and then invite us to participate. And then might be some other hub formation in the north end, and they also invite us to participate. So, and then might be someone in the east. So can we participate in all three?
Well, as we said earlier, if one senior center was a part of more than one application to become a hub, we look at each application against the other applications. So, but there's, again, the difference between partnering to become a hub and collaborations that you make with other groups, whether those are other senior centers that are not part of the hub or other community-based organizations. That piece, if you were partnering with another community-based organization and you needed funding to support if you're collaborating with another community-based organization and you needed some funding for that collaboration, you would put that in your budget, but you wouldn't expect that community-based organization to be a partner because they're not a senior center. It could happen that you're also connecting with other senior centers in that same way.
Okay.
But the application would include whoever those partners are needing the funding, putting whatever you need to fund the community connections you make.
Okay. And then the second question would be, it looks like now, since there are several ethnic organization who would not qualify under definition of senior center because they do not provide every day, 5 days a week services. So how
the definition of senior center is not every day, 5 days a week. If you go back to the request for proposal, it defines what we're seeing as a senior center, and it's
right. And
there's not a
assistant services 5 days a week.
Not for the senior center. That's for the hub.
Oh, the hub, not the senior. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I want to go back to the cultural specific hubs. If you're saying here's expertise, we're willing to provide this kind of expertise. If we say, and you can tell us who we
can work. King County will work with the hubs that put that piece in there and to figure and
so that we can just not specify who.
You are not this is an expertise we have and we want to share it with the other funded hubs or with our community collaborators. Susie and then
Oh, excuse me, Tracy, in one of your earlier slides, you talked about your hub definition, but prior to it, you said it could be a single senior center that grows into a hub, and I would like you to explain what your vision is of that.
Well, it goes back to the definition between the senior center, what is defined as a senior center, and the hub. So if an individual entity can meet the needs of, can meet the definition or the requirements that are outlined as the hub, then that would be the vision. So
Well, no, that's confusing because to me, you define what a senior center is, and then you have the hub.
So the difference between the definition of the senior center and the senior hub is the senior hub will not only invite more people in because it's funded and foundational and has robust funding. It's also reaching out to those elders in the service area that may, or the isolated elders who may not have access to coming into the physical space, but also reaching out more to those to invite more people into the space. It's connecting to the other VSHSL contracted services and making an explicit, yes, we will work with those contracted services. So that's the difference. That's in addition to the hub. It's the the collaborative learning opportunities is a definition to the hub.
Hello, how are you, Foxy?
So if you're on the phone and you may want to mute yourself.
That looks like a good thing to ride your bike. How are you doing?
So we're not able to mute them because then they wouldn't be able to hear us. But I'm just going to invite people on the phone to mute themselves. Lee.
Hello, how are you?
So my question is just going on.
You guys doing okay today?
So again, I'm going to remind people on the phone that if you're not muted, please do mute yourself. We're hearing some feedback on the phone and.
Okay.
We
may have to mute. Okay.
So my question to follow up on the technical assistance, and I'll just use Greenwood because we're really good at memory loss. So if that's the hub, can the technical expertise be the hub part, or is that just an add-on to other parts?
Does that
make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. And
that's our job. We're the technical expertise to create hubs.
Yeah.
Because these hubs are being defined in a particular way. So,
but I'm asking in the application if that's what we chose to do. Like we want to be the resource for memory loss in King County.
Oh.
Is that I don't know how to ask it, but is that the hub?
So you're imagining that you would have a cultural focus hub, and your cultural is the culture of dementia, or the.
So you would still need to serve other seniors.
Yes.
You do. And then it would be sort of like the homeless senior example. So it would be seniors with dementia that you could offer for whatever you think the cost of that would be to provide that service to other hubs. Okay.
So, Jean Marie. And
I want to start by saying thank you because having a self-tracing session and it's very excellent. But two questions. One, I'll start with the harder one. Have you considered contingency because of this year?
I'm sorry. Okay, sorry, Jean Marie.
Because, I'll just speak loudly and we'll keep me focused. Because this is a 5-year cycle, is there any consideration of a contingency? And let's just use the example of homelessness. If that were not a pressing issue right now, but if it became a pressing issue 3 years down the line, will you find a way to be adaptive for a new population that's pretty burdened?
If a senior hub that's awarded has the flexibility and the capacity and the creativity to expand its services through the supports and services, we will work with each of our senior hubs throughout the funding process to say what's working, what's not working, who are you serving, who's not still being served, and let's work together on this.
And let me just add a little bit, actually 2 things. I think you haven't been stumped, you've done a fantastic job. So thank you, and thank you all for all your questions. And then I also want to be super clear, what's really cool about the way that the county is going to be working on contracting through the levy is that we will actually have a performance measurement and evaluation plan that is completely separate from your contract, that will include continuous quality improvement rather than sanctioning to do exactly that. So yes.
Thank you. What? Okay, one. Go ahead.
I know there are other contracts later in the year for respite care, but could this proposal include respite care?
That is, we, no. Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you. So,
because there is a separate and different funding stream for that.
Thank you, Scarlett. Appreciate
So
that.
if you all can help us, we are going to pack up here. I think we might have another room available. If you didn't get your question answered, please email it in. If you can, grab your chair and stack it up.